So, okay, midway point of the season, 5-3. The way I would describe our feeling organizationally is that we are feel encouraged but incomplete. Certainly happy with the progress that we've built upon since last year, but really, and Kevin would be the first to tell you this, we still have a lot of work to do. That being said, really pleased with the work that Kevin and his staff have done in a year that's really forced them to deal with unprecedented circumstances. They've done a nice job of getting our team, getting our players ready to play on a weekly basis. And our players themselves, they've been a resilient bunch, both in games and dealing with just the ebb and flow of everything that they've had to deal with during a very difficult 2020. And I'm pleased with the progress that we've made on the field. Also pleased with the progress that our guys have made, off the field. Whether it's the donation to the East Cleveland school districts, getting all of our players registered to vote, and then them using their voices to get others registered to vote, and also work with state officials and local law enforcement. So again, encouraged but incomplete organizationally, and we're looking forward to the second half of the year. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Thank you very much, AB. Our first question will come from Mary Kay Cabot.
Oh, hi, Andrew. Just wondering, how close did you come at the trade deadline to making any kind of a move?
Yeah. Mary Kay, we explored a number of different possibilities, and really, for us, the trade process is really every week. It's not even just about the deadline. So we did explore a number of different possible transactions. I would say maybe a couple of things got perhaps within striking distance, but either moved away from us or we moved away from it for various reasons. But again, we're really happy with the team that we have in place, and we're looking forward to the next 8 games.
And I'm sure you probably can't be specific, but I mean, did you look to try to do anything to bolster your defense a little bit before the deadline?
Yeah, I wouldn't go into any specifics with any trade discussions that we have with other teams. But needless to say that we look for any opportunity, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams, that can help us in the second half of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Next up is Fred Grietham.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for taking the time. As far as I know, you can't address everything. It was a strange off season. You really overhauled the offense side, but the defense, a lot of one-year deals. I mean, other than Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett, I mean, what kind of building blocks have you seen that you can maybe build around this off season after this season's over?
Yeah, I understand the question, Fred, and I think quite honestly on the defense side of the ball we've had our moments, but we still have to make more plays. We just have to make more plays, really at every level of the defense. And I know that that's something that Kevin and Joe are working on during our self scout week during the bye. But that being said, that we have had guys that have stepped up in key moments throughout the first half of the season. So. Certainly we've had some standout performances. You mentioned Myles, but have a resilient group on that side of the ball that I think will continue to improve as we go throughout the season.
Thank you, Fred. We'll go to Jake Trotter next.
Yeah, hey Andrew. Obviously having a franchise quarterback is paramount in the NFL. How would you evaluate Baker Mayfield's first half of the season? What is the expectation for him going forward, the second half of the season, and then how will all of that impact decisions you'll have to make on, fifth-year option, potentially even, negotiating an extension?
Jake, I think Baker's done a nice job. He's done a nice job of putting us in a position to win games during the first 8 weeks of the season. I think we've all seen him progress on a week-to-week basis. He's done a nice job of learning the system, getting more comfortable in the system. Again, ultimately putting the team in a position to win. So, we're certainly, pleased with it from that perspective.
You mentioned initially you feel encouraged, but incomplete. Still, you guys are, on track to make the playoffs. That would snap the longest drought in the NFL. What do you think a playoff appearance would mean for this franchise, for this fan base, given how long it has been since, you guys have been there?
I'm not naive to the fact that really a playoff appearance for any franchise is special, because each season really is sacred. The chance to compete and ultimately get in the tournament. That all being said, our focus is really on attacking our opponents 1 week at a time and taking care of the little things on a weekly basis. Because if we're able to successfully accomplish that, the big things will take care of themselves.
Thank you, Jake. We'll go to Nate Ulrich.
Hey, Andrew, good to see you. Kind of piggybacking off what Jake was asking you about, where do you stand as far as, on the scale of you view Baker Mayfield as your quarterback of the future, or you don't, or the final 8 games are really going to be crucial to that decision? Where do you stand on Baker as it relates to the big questions about his future?
Yeah, I definitely understand the question, Nathan. Honestly, I really don't get too caught up in that type of narrative. All I know is that I think Baker has played well and he's done a nice job during these first 8 weeks. He's allowed us to play winning football. We've had winning football from that position. Expect him to keep doing that over the second half of the year. And look, we're going to be in a good place, as a team and organization, if that's the case.
And I know you talked about him coming in great shape and thinking he was really going to have a very improved season. Has he met your expectations that you set out before the season?
So really, again, the season's halfway through, but Baker's done everything that we've asked of him during these first 8 weeks. He's shown weekly improvement and done a really nice job within the system, and again, put our team in a position to win.
Thank you, Nate. Daryl Ryder has our next question.
Hey, Andrew, I want to go back to the defense for a second, and in the 1-year contracts. Just the perception outside looking in is that, maybe you were taking a more short-term approach while you give yourself some time to figure out that side of the ball. Could you maybe just, in your words, explain your team building philosophy on that side of the ball?
Yeah, it's a good question, Daryl. I would say really, again, up and down across the roster, like our goal is to add talent and as much talent as possible, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams. Certainly in a given offseason, you have a certain number of resources, whether it ends up being, cap dollars or picks, and it is your responsibility to allocate them as you think is appropriate in a given offseason. That all being said, I wouldn't necessarily read too much into, all the 1-year deals. I think we do have a number of young players on that side of the ball that we are excited about as well. Again, look, our goal is to add talent up and down the roster. I don't know that there needs to be too much read into perhaps the specificity of our approach this past winter.
And when you look at 2021, there's a lot of uncertainty from an economic standpoint, especially with the salary cap. That picture hasn't crystallized. You have to balance today with tomorrow on top of that. With having limited knowledge of what you actually will be able to work with from a cap standpoint, as far as definitive numbers go, how confident are you, though, that you've been able to maintain the flexibility required to absorb any major significant salary cuts while also giving yourself the opportunity to make the improvements you want to?
Daryl, you hit on an important theme because there is a fair amount of uncertainty in terms of what 2021 can look like from a salary cap perspective across the league. That being said, I do think that we have retained a fair amount of flexibility, both in terms of, again, a big part of our long-term goals organizationally is retaining as many of our core players as possible, in addition to continue adding talent as we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Tom Withers, your line is open.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your time. Just to Baker again for 1 second. He has been a little bit inconsistent this year. What would you attribute that to, and is that at all concerning?
Yeah, Tom, I think a big part of it is, really, I think you could probably make that case with, a number of players, on the team. And I think a big part of it is has been a really unprecedented year within the NFL. And I think it's a credit to our players, it's a credit to our coaching staff that with a very limited offseason, a very, a non-existent preseason, and then we're going off and playing with a lot of new faces, that we've been able to get to the midway point with a chance to have all the year-long goals that we set out to meet, right out in front of us for the second half of the year.
I don't know if a playoff spot was a year-long goal. I'm suspecting it probably was, but has getting to 5-3, Andrew, and you mentioned that a playoff spot is sacred. What is your how do you balance going kind of for the brass ring, if you will, in this season, and then, long-term sustainable growth?
So I guess maybe I should back up and say, Tom, that for us, we're always want to compete. We always want to make sure that we give ourselves a chance to get in the tournament, so to speak. But you're right that part of the general manager's job is to have a bit of a foot in the present and a bit of a foot in the future as well. And sometimes balancing those perspectives can be challenging. But at the same time, I like how we're positioned. I like what the team has done during the first 8 weeks of the season, and think that we have a lot more to do and potentially accomplish over these next 8 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Scott Petrick, you have our next question.
Hey, Andrew. Regarding the 5-3, do you view it any differently given the two big losses inside the division? And to you, did that show that there was still a sizable gap between you and Baltimore and Pittsburgh?
So to answer maybe the first part of your question, Scott, I think 5-3 is nice, but I don't think anyone in our organization views it as necessarily like an accomplishment, just because the season is incomplete. It's not like we set out a goal to say, hey, we're going to be 5-3 in 8 games. We want to try and compete and win every game. To your question specifically about Baltimore and Pittsburgh, from my perspective, I think it still is very much incomplete. We obviously did not play well against either of those opponents during the first 2 months of the year. But that all being said, we're looking for improvement over the second half of the season. We're fortunate enough that we get both of those opponents again, and that's something that we'll look at in broader strokes once we get to the offseason.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Dan Lobby, go to you.
Hey, Andrew. I want to ask you about a trade you did make back in September when you went and got Ronnie Harrison. What goes into kind of deciding to pull the trigger on a trade like that? What are you looking for? And then just specifically to the player, and do you like what you've seen from him so far?
Yeah. So in Ronnie's case, Ronnie was attracted to us for a couple of reasons. Number one, right, it always starts with the on-field performance, the on-field profile. We thought Ronnie was a big, long, athletic, versatile playmaking safety. Could help fill some of the void that was created when Grant Delpit went down with the Achilles injury. And in Joe's defense, big versatile safeties really allow him as a coordinator a ton of flexibility in both the run and pass game. Other considerations that come into play with Ronnie, he was 23 years old when we traded for him, super young, but already had 2 years of starting experience, or probably more, a year and a half of starting experience under his belt. So we felt the on-field profile, where he was in his career, and then also the fact that he had 2 years left on his deal could help us both immediately in the short term, and next year into 2021 was made him an attractive target to pursue. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention obviously losing Grant in August made it even that much of a clearer decision for us. And obviously we're very pleased with how he's progressed and acclimated to the defense since he's been here.
Thank you, Dan. Zach Jackson, you have our next question.
I think you're muted, Zach.
Yeah, I am now. Hey, Andrew, just wanted to ask you about the D-line. Evaluate what you've seen and going forward. You have Miles under contract and a couple other guys you're not. So just wanted to ask you about that position as a whole.
Yeah, I think the D-line has had games and weeks where they really have been dominant, and they've been a big factor in us being able to win well, or just win games and perform well on that side of the ball. I do think that over the first 8 weeks of the season, we've probably seen a few more injuries in that position group than certainly we had hoped in the beginning of the year. It's been nice to see OV get healthy, and obviously he made an impact for us this past Sunday. It'll be good to see Adrian get back to full speed after the bye, and then obviously Miles, he's played incredibly well. I mean, just as simple as that. He's really, quite honestly, played at a high level for the past 3 years, and I think he's probably taken another step forward this season. So we're obviously very pleased with what he's done over the first 8 games.
Thank you, Zach. Doug Maurice, you're up.
Hey, Andrew, I'm curious about the melding of Kevin and a new coaching staff and this team. And as you evaluate players, whether it's Baker or anybody else who maybe has been around for a couple years, but it's their first year with this staff, with Kevin and these guys, how does that affect your evaluation as, you know, that, hey, maybe we know these players, but now we know them with these guys and we're getting a sense from how they might work together. And then what do you think of how this staff has done through 8 games?
So I'll start with the second part of your question first, Doug. I think the staff has been fantastic. Couldn't be more pleased with, what Kevin, our coordinators, our position coaches, our QCs have done with the team and getting the players ready on a weekly basis. In terms of your question about evaluation with the new stuff, it's a good one, and typically we really do deal with it on a case by case. So, for instance, the quarterback position, that takes a lot of nuance, and it's a much different offense than perhaps we've seen here in the past couple of years. So that's always taken into account when you're evaluating a player there. Or for instance, Wyatt Teller, for instance, had throughout his whole career played in more of a gap-oriented run scheme, and now we're going to the wide zone, which is something completely different than he's ever done. And through his hard work and Bill Callahan, he's really he really flourished in it. Before getting hurt. So like you do have those moments where you say, hey, look, we do have a player that may be doing something a lot different than what he's done throughout his career. But there are others that are probably a bit cleaner transitions because there is some overlap with really any offensive system or any defensive system, which is really why you have to deal with it on an individual basis.
And the Nick Chubb injury, how do you feel like you guys have weathered that? And what did it show you in Nick's absence of what he means to this team?
Yeah. So number one, there's, Nick Chubb is one of those players that, no one person replaces. He's an outstanding football player and a big part of what we do and what we will continue to do over the course of the year. That all being said, I'm really pleased with what Kareem has done, shouldering the load and playing, banged up and tough, and what he's done in both the run game and pass game. I think the offensive line has done a good job of really continuing to open holes in the run game, and then really take it as a personal challenge to make sure that we're still productive in that phase, even with Nick out. So, over the past few weeks, I think the offense has done a nice job of weathering the storm, but we're certainly looking forward to getting Nick back, whenever that occurs.
Jake Trotter, back to you.
Yeah, Andrew, especially now in light of the injury, how would you characterize Odell's future in Cleveland?
Yeah, honestly, like our focus with Odell is one of the best receivers in the NFL. He played really good football for us before he was injured. He's done a fantastic job with his teammates at practice. He's embraced the organization. He's under contract for multiple years. So our focus with Odell is making sure that he recovers from the ACL tear. Like we want him to be healthy and ready to go next year. But we're pleased with him.
You always, it's a lot of outside noise about, it's almost kind of feels like a year-to-year thing with Odell. Not from you guys, but again, from the outside. Do you see him as a, long-term piece along with your young core of guys that were drafted by the franchise going forward?
Jake, I feel like this is a question that I've literally addressed every week since,
right.
Since I took the job. So really at this point in time, I really don't see a difference.
Thank you, Jake. We'll go to Mary Kay Cabot next.
Well, I was going to ask all about Odell, but so since we took care of that mostly, can you just kind of talk about how you guys may have dodged a little bit of a bullet with Miles not having a serious knee injury and just, how you guys think he'll be going forward? Do you think he's going to need a couple of weeks to get back to himself, or do you think by the bye week will, help him out a lot?
Yeah, Mary Kay, we anticipate, Miles, being ready to go in full force, through the second half of the year. He's obviously a big part of what we do defensively, and really, he's an elite playmaker in this league. So look, we're excited that that really wasn't anything major significance, and we're looking forward to having him back on the field.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Kay. Nate Orrick, you have our next question.
Andrew, just a record keeping thing about Odell. Have you found out when he's going to have his surgery? Has it been scheduled yet?
Yeah, it'll be early next week.
Okay. And when you said to Jake that you don't really see a difference as it related to a question about Odell, are you saying that your view of him as a part of the future hasn't changed? Is that what you meant?
Yeah. I would say, to me, and respectfully, Nate, I feel like I've answered this question enough. I can't control what the outside noise says.
Okay. So. I just want to make sure I was interpreting that. I did have one other question, not Odell, before I let go, but we asked you a ton about Jedrick Wills and drafting them and making the switch from right tackle to left tackle. What is your view of the first half of his rookie season? Given
he's done a nice job, and I think it's a credit to the work that he's put in, and it's a huge credit to Bill Callahan and Scott Peters with the work that they've done there, because it's not an easy task on an abbreviated offseason. Jed still has work to do, and he'll be the first to tell you that. He is by no means a finished product, but in terms of transitioning as really any rookie left tackle, let alone one who hadn't played left tackle since really ever for a significant period of time. We're pleased with, I should say that's like kind of the theme of the first half, and encouraged, but it still is incomplete, and expect him to continue to make strides.
Scott Petrick, you're up.
Andrew, getting back to the trade deadline yesterday, was there a reason that you didn't make any deals? I mean, were people just asking too much draft compensation? Was it the uncertainty of the salary cap that played such a factor?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll answer your question a little bit more broadly, Scott. I think there are a couple reasons why you probably saw less overall trade volume in the league as a whole. I think number one, there are just in general there are probably fewer sellers this year in past years, and I think a big part of that is just the addition of the seventh playoff spot in both conferences, where you'll have more teams that are actually in the mix for the playoffs. I think really the second piece of that, and you hit on this theme, and I think Daryl might have as well. With the uncertainty with the salary cap, entering 2021, it does make certain transactions or certain trades a lot more difficult for teams across the league. So to us specifically, we did explore a number of potential transactions, but at the end of the day, we want to make sure that it's the right match for us. And for whatever reason, we didn't necessarily feel any of those deals, fit with what we were trying to do on the roster, and we feel really good about the guys that we have on hand entering the second half of the season.
Do you feel there's a big void with not having Odell's deep threat, or were you able to replace that with the guys that you have on your roster?
Scott, I think it's a little bit like I discussed with Nick, where Odell's one of the best receivers in the league. That's not a loss of a player of that caliber. You don't just realistically fully replace. It'll take a bit of a committee approach. I like the guys that we have in the receiver room. I thought we saw their potential with their ability to step up against Cincinnati 2 weeks ago. But it really will take a next man up mentality and guys playing to their strengths and really continue to step up and produce. Because Odell's not coming back this year.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. We have time for three more. We'll go to Doug, Jake, and Terry. Doug, you're up first.
Andrew, just in terms of roster building and philosophically, how much you think you should invest in an offensive line with what you guys did with a high first-round pick, signing Jack Conklin, with the way we saw Wyatt play, what they have done, how has it matched what you thought you would get out of this offensive line, and what have you seen that it's done for the offense to have these five guys?
Yeah, I think that position group has been outstanding. And Doug, I can't say this enough, but not even to, I'd also throw in terms of additions, Bill Callahan into that group. Like I can't, overstate, his impact with that position group. It's, going to be a part of our DNA. That's a group that we want to make sure is strong and deep, for the long term, because it really does set a foundation for your offense. If that group isn't at a certain level of performance, it's really hard for your quarterback and your skill guys to function. So, that's something that is and will continue to be a priority, and we're really pleased with how that group has gelled together and ultimately how that group has performed.
Thank you. We'll go to Terry Pluto next.
Andrew, you mentioned part of your DNA being the offensive line. What else would you say are just, I know all positions are important, but clearly that was one. What else is a part of your DNA you want this team to be?
Yeah, Terry, I definitely understand the question. I think, to be honest, that's probably a bit more of like an off-season question or discussion. Now, talking through our, really we're focused on the season, and we'll talk about kind of big picture and big picture strategy at the appropriate.
Let me try this in terms of those things. Like obviously the offensive line has gone in that direction. What other parts of the ball do you see going, that you've been excited about after the first 8 games, going that type of direction that has you that's made you pleased?
Yeah, I think perhaps sticking on the offense side of the ball, been really pleased with our tight end group, both run game and pass game. Our backs have played well. We've talked about Baker. We've talked about the receiver stepping up. On the defensive side of the ball, obviously Miles is having a fantastic year. I think our corner group is playing good football, and we're certainly excited to see how our young linebackers progress on the second half. In the second half of the season. So I think there's a lot to be encouraged with across the roster. We're by no means a finished product. But I think there are bright spots throughout these first 8 games in every phase.
And our last question goes to Jake Trotter.
Yeah, Andrew, the buzzword we kept hearing from you guys over the winter was alignment. Now that we're halfway through the season, how is that going from ownership to you, to Paul, to Kevin? And then what has impressed you the most about Kevin? I mean, I know you guys knew each other a little bit before, but now that you're up close and personal, what has impressed you the most about him through the first half of the season?
So I think the most impressive part about Kevin is just his voice. He's genuinely the same guy every single day, regardless of what has happened on Sunday, regardless of what we've dealt with during the day, even keeled, same quick wit and sense of humor. So I think that's the most impressive part, because I think all of us on this call realize how hard and how stressful his job can be. I think our team is in about as good a hands as we could ask for with Kevin at the helm.